What is it about dark and edgy games that just make me want to point and laugh at them? Could it be that they're trying too hard? Or maybe they're so dark it's kind of funny? Or maybe, if I just point and laugh hard enough, they'll go into a corner and start cutting themselves as they cry. Who knows? Anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at the poster boy of what is considered edgy and dark, Shadow the Hedgehog.
So it's actually kind of hard to find an angle to start with when it comes to Shadow the Hedgehog, for both the game and the character. Shadow was supposed to be dead since Sonic Adventure 2, but fan service went full mercy on his ass and now we have 2 more games to flesh this character out. Unfortunately, the writers seem to have banged their heads on a doorframe when it came to actually giving Shadow a decent story. To make matters worse, the fandom wiki page for this game classifies it as a third-person shooter rather than a platformer. And if you've played Shadow the Hedgehog, you'd understand why. I've owned Shadow the Hedgehog all the way back since 2005 when it was first released, and even to this day I laugh a bit when I see the opening cutscene. You know, where Shadow loads an automatic weapon and attempting to look tough in front of the full moon that canonically was supposed to be blown in half. If you find yourself laughing at this imagery, then that is a really bad sign. Usually I summarize gameplay and story separately, but in this game the story and the gameplay are very much connected. Not so much in a well-blended way, but more of a Siamese twins sort of way. Shadow the Hedgehog starts with Shadow wondering who the hell he is, as most amnesiacs tend to do. And then suddenly, aliens.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I don't get it either. Just an army of holy shit fucking aliens drop down from the sky, and no one that watches the skies for a living sees this shit. The alien leader called Black Doom confronts Shadow and tells him to get the Chaos Emeralds. And Shadow, like a dumbass, goes off to get said emeralds because he thinks he can figure out his past if he does. Or he could, for instance, talk to any one of the good guys because they know exactly who he is at this point. As you play, you're given the option to take one of 5 different paths. One for neutral, good, evil, or 2 that are in between. Neutral is just for going to the end of the stage, while taking the good and evil paths require you to do something good or be a complete dick. Oh, and destroying a certain amount of things. No, seriously, most of these missions have you either collect or kill a certain number of things, and it really fucks with the pace of the game. Like Lost Impact, for example. This is a stage where it can take you over 40 fucking minutes to complete because you're busy finding all the artificial chaos. At the final stage of every path, you have a boss encounter where you can either defeat the boss the way you usually would, or be a complete buddy fucker and turn on the people that you've been helping at the last possible second. Even if your allegiance wasn't all over the place, there are times when the cutscenes really don't make any sense. Like the neutral path, where Shadow is completely disobeying Black Doom about giving him the Chaos Emeralds and pissing him off. But later on the same path, Shadow can be seen with Black Doom, supposedly humping his non-existent legs. Just imagine the clusterfucking confusion if you decide to work for both sides. But all this work you've done doesn't mean a damn thing. None of the endings you choose are canon. Why? Because there's a last story that's only available when you defeat every boss. Every final stage has 2 bosses, and there are 5 total paths, meaning that there are 10 non-canon endings that you need to get through before you can reach the end of the real story. That's some rectum penetrating bullshit right there, only made worse with the various plot holes within these storylines too. Then we have the main feature of the gameplay, guns. And in a Sonic game, that really makes me cringe. Guns of various kinds can be found all over the place and they're the most reliable at killing enemies. Shadow can also use homing attacks and perform hand-to-hand combat, which suck ass. And there's vehicles that Shadow can commandeer and drive. Don't. Please. They're slow as shit and the controls are terrible. Speaking of controls, Shadow himself seems to have 2 sticks of butter strapped to his feet because he's sliding all up in this bitch. The last thing I want to bring up are Shadow's hero and dark gauges. These work in a very simple way. You can fill them up by either killing enemies or allies, and then you can use either Chaos Control or Chaos Blast. Chaos Control is the simple, fuck this shit I'm out, and lets you skip large chunks of the stage. And Chaos Blast is a standard fuck all y'all that wipes out everything in the immediate vicinity. But the best part about both these gauges is that as the gauges go down, you have unlimited ammunition. Not sure how that works, but let's just roll with it. Shadow the Hedgehog is the exact opposite of what makes a Sonic game. Everything's so dark and gritty. It's more of a gun game than a platformer. A simple and straightforward narrative is turned into a clusterfuck. And there's so much needless swearing that it's probably my shitty fucking bastard child I had with the slutty stripper.
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
Oh, and not to mention that this is the first game in the Sonic series with really dull music. It's like the people behind Shadow the Hedgehog did exactly what Shadow himself did in-game and completely ignored all logic. The greatest sin about the game, however, is that you need to play the game at least 10 times, only to find that your choices for an ending do not mean a goddamn thing. There's very few things I find worse about a game than insulting the very intelligence of the player by undermining its own story. But is there anything even remotely redeeming about Shadow the Hedgehog? I hate to say it, but there kind of is. Shadow the Hedgehog was the first game in the series to bring the 4Kids voice actors, which personally I find as an improvement. There were fans that were bitching about this change, but frankly I would have been more on board about bitching with the needless swearing, you fuckers. Other than that, the gunplay isn't terrible. Granted, you get the most out of fully automatic weapons, but they do quite a bit of damage and many have a slight lock-on feature if your angle is right. I want it to be known that I'm actually a much bigger fan of Shadow than I am of Sonic. After all, Shadow had a decent backstory in SA2 that made him somewhat relatable, but that does not protect a decent character from shitty writing and lazy execution.
I was a little surprised to learn that there are people out there that actually like Shadow the Hedgehog and consider it a good game. Now, I don't know what their damage is, brain probably, but to each their own I guess. So next time we'll be taking a look at the second game in the Edge-a-thon, which is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. This has been Regnilla, and I will see you again next time. Take care, people.